yeah, like New York is just gonna be my destiny. New York is gonna be everything for me. New York will be the place where I finally step into myself. But then with, I guess, the mindset I was in when I actually went to New York, it just very much did not become the place where I stepped into myself. Did I get it all wrong? Like, did I like miscalculate this whole thing and maybe it wasn't New York that was making me unhappy? Maybe it was me.
The realization came all at once while I was on a walk in the Upper East Side. I asked myself, could I have loved New York if I'd been able to fall in love here? And I mean romantic love. And the answer immediately struck me as yes. And it seemed like the most obvious thing in the world. I was looking up at buildings, thinking how objectively beautiful they are, thinking how subjectively I find New York just about more beautiful than any other city. I love the way it reaches to the sky. I love the Art Deco influences. I love the fire escapes hanging gracefully off old tenement buildings. I love the stories they imply. That tree grows in Brooklyn image of a girl alone on her fire escape, suspended above the action below and taking it all in.
The thing was, though, falling in love in New York, having the city reveal itself to me through the lens of a new romance, that was always off limits. Because you see, when I moved to New York, it was the introduction into the long distance phase of the relationship that I'd begun while I was living in London, the city I lived in previous to New York. What that effectively meant was that for the time that I was in New York, I could not participate in the dating life of New York City, which, as someone who was raised on New York City-based romantic comedies, like, what was I supposed to do? All I wanted to do was go on dates and like have a good time and like go out to bars and go to restaurants and like walk through the city streets at night with some guy's arm around me. That was all I wanted, and I like couldn't do it most of the time, like only kind of when my boyfriend would come to visit me from London, which like wasn't that, like it wasn't often enough. The whole romance of New York City just kind of like fell flat for me. I tried sometimes to do things like go out dancing or go to bars or things like that are kind of date-like or date-adjacent, or the way that you meet new people. But every time I would do them, I kind of got to be like a similar pattern where it's like I would go out, and then what would happen is that the men would descend. And I'd try to fend them off, and I'd be like, oh, I'm in a relationship. Oh, I have a boyfriend. They'd be like, well, where is he? And I'd be like, he's in London. And either they like wouldn't believe me, or they'd like think, oh yeah, you made this boyfriend up, you don't really have anyone. Or they'd be like, oh, he's so far away, it doesn't really matter. Are you gonna like take this chance then to play around while your boyfriend's not here? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to. And I know some people would also tell me like, well, you don't actually have to be polite to the men. You could just tell them to go away. And to that I say, clearly you don't recognize that I grew up in small town Michigan. Like, it's not an option. It's not an option. I can't do it. I can't just go and be rude to someone. I can't just be like, hey, I'm not interested. No, I have to be like, oh, I'm so flattered, but I can't. I have a boyfriend, sorry. I got in basically this like pretty dark mood in New York for about like a good 4 years. I was in a dark mood, and I just blamed everything on New York. Despite the fact that, like, by the way, disclaimer, like, I'd chosen New York also because when I was like 14 and I went there for the first time, it was like the best thing I'd ever seen. Like, I was in love with it. What I saw of New York was just like, and like what I kind of told myself it was like, oh, like it's just like a hyper-competitive city. Like everyone's obsessed with career and advancement. Like no one really cares about like each other or anything creative. They just want to work in corporate or something. I don't know like what I told myself about New York. I told myself a lot of things about New York. If I was romanticizing my life, I understand that I should have been focusing on learning to love myself. I was supposed to be learning to appreciate the simple things in life. I was supposed to be learning to value time that I had alone. I was supposed to be taking myself on dates. Like there was one time a few years ago when I like had the brilliant idea that I was gonna make the most of a Saturday in New York. And so I like decided, you know, I'm gonna look up a bookstore relatively nearby, but far enough so that it takes a little bit of a walk to get there. I'm gonna take myself on a romantic walk to Central Park. And so I did. I put on my outfit, walked across the park, I went to the bookstore, I picked up a nice copy of The Interpreter, which I really liked and highly recommend. Can't remember who it's by, but maybe I'll figure that out. And then I ended up sitting in like kind of this like bench alcove area by Morningside Park, kind of these elevated bench alcoves overlooking the park. Very romantic, very beautiful. Would have been a very nice place to go on a date, but you know, I was there by myself. So I like sat there and I read my book by myself, and I took some pictures of myself reading the book, and I thought, oh, this is very romantic, this is very romanticized. And then I went home. And the thing was, it was like fun enough. It was fun enough, but like, it definitely felt a little empty. Yeah, would have been better with a date. With all these acts of romanticizing my life, I was getting frustrated because I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing. Like, I put on little outfits, I went for walks to areas that I really liked, very pretty aesthetic areas where people go to do aesthetic things. You know, I'd go and like be like, okay, today I'm going to get the bus down because, again, I mean, I very much romanticize the bus. I don't know why. I'm gonna get the bus down to the East Village. I'm gonna walk along St. Mark's Place. Maybe I'll do a loop of Tompkins Square Park. And I would do this and I'd just be like, this feels wrong. Is everyone thinking I'm crazy and alone? Is it weird to be alone? Yes. And yeah, it just like it wasn't going very well. And you know, sometimes I would spend money, sometimes I wouldn't, because it seemed like the jury was out on whether you're supposed to spend money or not to romanticize your life. Like, I would say probably not, but like, I'm supposed to buy a cute little coffee at least or something, right? So like, in the psychology behind romanticizing your life, and like it turns out there is psychology behind it, which actually like, yeah, makes sense. Basically, like, it's supposed to work because it's supposed to imbue you with a sense of agency. Like, sense of agency being like the idea that you have a sense of control over your life and the consequences of your actions. You're tricking your brain into thinking that even if you might not have control over your life, you truly do. And like, I mean, I see that, like, I see it. But also, when I was in New York, it was like, okay, well, like, my cost of living is super high. I have a roach problem that seems to be basically intractable. Like, they just kept coming and coming and coming, and like, no matter how clean I was, couldn't do anything about them. Like, it was like the bane of my existence. Like, it was just, I suffered so much under the reign of terror of the roaches. And also, like, there was just this demand I felt to like work these super long hours doing a job I didn't want to do. And I just felt so like bored without that like bedrock of satisfaction with like the wider shape of my life. Like, everything I tried to do to romanticize just seemed empty. And also, like, compounding that emptiness was the fact that I wasn't sharing it with anyone.
And in the past, my life had felt romantic. When I was new in London, for example, and every day felt like I might meet the love of my life, I didn't need to force myself to find beauty in the mundane. The beauty flowed naturally from everything. There was beauty in getting the bus, there was beauty in making pesto pasta every night for weeks on end, there was beauty in the cheap bottle of supermarket wine, which I drank at my desk while watching London lifestyle vloggers, and not even from a place of envy.
In my life in London, my like idealized, romanticized life in London, I had two main things in place that I think were missing from my life in New York. And the first was this sense of like broader life purpose. I was studying, I was doing something I thought I wanted to do. I thought I was on the path to like a career, I guess, that I wanted to have, even though like by the time I was in New York, I think I was like completely and totally disavowing the idea of career in general. Like, I was like, I don't think I want to have one, maybe at all. But then the second was kind of this more intangible, like almost sense of possibility in life. And the thing was, like, this sense of possibility started from the idea, yeah, of romantic love, like indeed interpersonal romantic love between two people. Like, that was where the sense of possibility started from. But I think like in thinking about this whole like romanticizing my life idea and how it's like, yeah, you shouldn't really equate like the romantic love aspect with like this idea of romanticizing the day-to-day. I get it. But this idea of romantic love, like it almost always went unrequited. Like none of these relationships that kind of guided my sense of possibility in London really ever worked out, and that wasn't really the point. The point was that I could at any moment fall in love. That anyone I passed on the street could be a person who was going to change my whole life. It was so fundamental to my life, and I think it really did just propel me forward through every day that I spent in London and kind of every day that I spent in my life previously. I was in New York trying to basically date myself, romance myself, surrounded by this ideal city for doing such a thing, where so many others have gone before me in romanticizing their own lives. And it was kind of disappointing that like I just wasn't quite making it happen. I didn't seem able to tap into the same like basic source of like joy and satisfaction that all these other people seem to be able to do, and I was kind of like, what's wrong with me? Why can I not find this? But then I realized that the way I tried to romanticize my life just wasn't really suited to me. I was trying to do it through solitary activities, going and doing aesthetic things in aesthetic surroundings, and like that's all well and good, like sure, fine, fun, amazing, but it left me feeling pretty cold. And I'd come home from these like efforts to imbue romance into my life and just kind of feel worse than I'd felt when I like started the day, and I'd just be like, this is not what it's supposed to be. But like it seems to me though that maybe it was like my idea of romanticizing my life was always, and this goes back to like the search for a romantic partner, or the pursuit of a romantic partner, or the possibility of a romantic partner always being in the back of my mind as like a driving force in everything I did. Like behind all of that always was like this desire for connection, like interpersonal connection. Maybe it was like I could have directed this sense of romance towards something more like friendships. I never really pursued friendships that hard in New York because I guess I felt too tired. Because I felt too tired by like, you know, I was burdened by like the work pressures and the financial pressures and the roach pressures. But also, like, I guess I was kind of also like left exhausted by all of these efforts to like take myself on these unsatisfying dates. And so like, I just was like, well, I'm exhausted now. I'm not gonna go out and meet people when like I haven't even found myself to be someone like worth meeting. New York remains for me, like I still see it as this like hyper romantic place, and I still do see it as this place where like there does seem to be just like absolutely amazing transcendent possibility around every corner. And yeah, like I think I want to go back still. I kind of end on the same thought every time. Like I do still see the possibility, and I just wish that I'd done it in a way that was like true and authentic to myself, instead of just like trying to, I guess, follow the version of romance that I saw perpetuated on social media. And so I think, yeah, my 2 cents is I think romanticizing your life has to be all about the other people, you know, and not so much about you, and definitely not about how pretty it looks on the surface.